In this video I'll look at cloning and clone types in 3ds Max. As you can see in the perspective here, there's already a lot of cloned objects in the scene. The buildings use the same elements for a lot of the balconies and the sunshades on the middle building here. Additionally, I've cloned things like the doors and other fittings. I'll clone my streetlight to look at different ways of cloning. I'll select it and press W for move if I'm not in the Select and Move tool already. We can hold Shift and click and drag an object, in this case on the X-axis, and create a clone. This is a way to do a free clone, for example, cloning one object, and then choosing in the clone options different ways of cloning, and if we'd like a quick array or number of copies of them, we can put that in. A copy, then, is exactly as it sounds. With a copy, changing the clone doesn't change the original. For example, if I go by vertex, select the head of the streetlight and pull it up, the original stays as it was. Cloning an object as an instance produces a different result. In this case, I'll clone this streetlight again, watching down on the bottom to hit roughly 40 feet, 480 inches, and cloning as an instance. I'll clone a couple of them to show this. Now with the instance, if I look over on the Modify tab on the command panel, I can see that the type of the object, here Editable Poly, is bold, and there's a Make Unique button available, meaning that this is not a unique object. Changes made to one of an instance then affect them all. For example, if I pick the top vertices, the head of the streetlight, and pull them up on the Z-axis, the others change along with it. Instances are very handy for like objects. There's a lot of things in the world we deal with that are alike, such as streetlights, and any change to one should be made to all of them, so they all look like they're made the same. The last kind of clone then is a reference. Again, shift cloning and dragging here on my streetlight and choosing reference produces a different result. Instead of merely an instance, Streetlight 2 has Editable Poly, an instance and the Make Unique button available, but above it is this thicker line called the reference line. What this means is that this object functions as an instance below the reference line and a copy above. For example, if I drop down in the modifier list and put a bend modifier on my streetlight and crank up the angle on it, maybe also the direction to pull it over, my streetlight is trying to bend. However, because this is above the reference line, this modifier is a copy. Changes made below the reference line to the Editable Poly, such as grabbing those vertices and pulling them, affect both objects. I can turn on, over here, the End Result toggle, and what I can see in this is that I'm selecting these vertices and trying to bend them with the Bend modifier here, but those changes, the bending, is not affecting the original. For example, I might put above the reference line a Poly Select to deselect that object, show the end result, and there's my elongated, bent streetlight, an instance below and a copy above. For this city, most of our clones can be instances. Like streetlight should be modified the same. What I'll do then is clone this streetlight, only I'll take a different approach. I'll pick my streetlight and make a regular clone of them at 60 feet on center. Under Tools, I can also choose Array, and this allows me to do a 1, 2, or 3D array, moving, rotating, and scaling as needed, and specifying the number of copies. For example, here I'll put on the X-axis 720, or 60 feet. You can also enter in, because you're working in default units which are inches here, feet. Here's 60, single quote, and pressing tab makes it 720. Max will convert for you. I'd like to make 6 of them, cloning as an instance, and I'll turn on Preview. And there's my streetlights. Here's one behind the Preview dialog, and there's the shadow of the next one. I'll click OK, and there's my line of cloned streetlights, cloned as instances and ready to light up the street. Now I'll clone the bus stop while I'm at it. Selecting it, moving over, panning down a bit, and in this case simply holding Shift and cloning. The streetlight should be regularly spaced, whereas the bus stop may not be so much. I'll pull this one over and clone it as an instance as well. This way, if I change one bus stop, they both change. 3ds Max has really powerful tools for cloning, and we can clone as part of moving things, rotating or scaling, or simply make clones by pressing Ctrl V. For one last example, let's say I need one more streetlight here. I'll select it and press Ctrl V to clone. I'll clone as an instance, and now I'll move it over a set number of units. I'll right-click and there's my quad menu, and next to Move is a dialog. I'll pull that up and that's my transform type-in. I'll put in the offset world 720 on the X. There's that 60-foot spacing again. As you can see, we have lots of ways to do things here, and it's really up to you to pick the tools that best suit your workflow for the moment, and switch around so you get the job done quick. With our scene in place then, we'll start to get some more materials on. We've got to get our street looking like street, and concrete on the sidewalk. There's also some places on the buildings that need a few other materials which we'll create, and we'll do this in the next video.